This is lesson 5-2. We're still talking about solving inequalities. In 5.1, we talked about solving using addition and subtraction. Now in lesson 2, we're going to solve using multiplication and division. So along with using a slightly harder operation to solve, we're also going to add in another step. So solving inequalities by multiplication. If each side of an inequality multiplied by the same positive number, the resulting inequality is also true. So whatever you do on one side of an inequality, you do the same thing to the other side. However, the one exception is, and this is true for division as well, I wrote it down here, kind of summarizing it quickly in my own words. Our sign flips if and only if we multiply or divide both sides of our inequality by, a negative number. So if we're multiplying or dividing by a positive number, nothing changes. Our sign stays the same. We solve just like we did with addition and subtraction, done. If we multiply or divide by a negative number, not only are we solving, but we also have to flip our inequality sign, okay? So all three of these must be true. We have to either multiply or divide, not add or subtract, multiply or divide both sides of our inequality, not just one side, both sides by a negative number, okay? So they have a little example up here. Here, solve negative y divided by 8 is greater than or equal to 12. Well, to get y by itself, it's being divided by 8 and it's negative. So I'm going to do the opposite of divided by 8, and I'm going to multiply by 8, and I'm going to multiply by negative 8 just so that I can cancel out this negative as well, right? So to get rid of divided by negative 8, I'm going to multiply by negative 8. So I got to do the same thing over here. So you see, since I multiplied both sides by negative 8, my sign flipped, right? Nothing touched it, but since I multiplied both sides of my inequality by a negative 8, my sign was opened to the left over here. Now it's open to the right. I flipped it. Okay, then I can go ahead and simplify. The negative 8's cancel, and I'm left with y. That sign, after I flipped it, just bring it down, and negative 8 times 12 is negative 96. So your sign flips if and only if you multiply both sides of your inequality by a negative number. You need to write that down somewhere, do it. I guarantee you're going to get at least one of these problems wrong, if not more, because everyone gets working fast and you skip one of these somewhere, right? You might forget about multiplying and dividing, or you might not do it to both sides, or it might be by a positive number and you just get confused, whatever. All three have to be true for you to flip your sign. So let's solve a few together down here. All right, here, y divided by 6 is less than or equal to 2. To get rid of divided by, I'm going to multiply by 6, and I have to do the same thing here. Now, did I multiply by a negative number? Nope, so nothing changes. My sign stays the same. The 6's cancel. I'm left with y. My sign stays the same. And 2 times 6 is 12. Done. Here, number 2, in divided by negative 50. So to get rid of divided by negative 50, I'm going to multiply by negative 50 on both sides of my inequality. And since I'm multiplying by a negative on both sides, these go away. I'm left with in here. 22 times negative 50. Let's see. 22 times 5 is 110. 110 plus the 0 on the end, and it's negative. And then my sign, which was greater than, since I multiplied both sides by a negative, now it's going to be less than. My sign flipped. Okay, let me find another negative one. Here's a fraction. Let's do a fraction. 1/4 n is greater than or equal to 10. To get rid of a fraction, not the whole thing, we're not getting rid of 1/4 n. We want to leave the n, and we just want to get rid of 1/4. So how do I get rid of a fraction? I multiply the whole thing by the reciprocal. So I just flip it upside down. And I have to do the same thing over here. 4/1 is the same thing as 4. So 4/1 and 1/4, they cancel each other out. And I'm left with n. On this side, 10 times 4 is 40. And I multiplied both sides by a positive number, right? Doesn't matter if it's a fraction or not. If it's a positive number, my sign stays the same. Done. Easy peasy. Now let's do one with a negative number, right? Here we have negative 2/3 times b is less than 1/3. So to get rid of negative 2/3, I'm going to multiply by negative 3/2. I want to get rid of the negative, so I have to multiply by a negative. I want to get rid of 2/3, so I multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, and so I have to do the same thing over here. I'm multiplying by negative 3/2. So notice I multiplied both sides by a negative number, which means my sign is going to flip. Every time I do that, I'm going to highlight it, just so we don't lose track of it. If it's by a negative number on both sides, my sign flips. So this fraction cancels this fraction, and I'm left with b. 1/3 times negative 3/2 gives me negative 3/6. This is top. 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. 3 times 2 is 6. Can I simplify that? Yes, I can. Negative 1/2. So my answer here is negative 1/2. And then my sign was a less than sign, but since I multiplied both sides by a negative, it's going to change to a greater than sign. So I just flip it. That's it. I multiplied one time, so I flip my sign one time. Easy peasy. Okay, let's do another. Okay, here's one. Number 12. I'll go back and do some others, but I just saw this one. All right, number 12. 2a divided by 7 is greater than or equal to negative 6, right? Well, first of all, this side is being divided by 7. Okay, so to get rid of divided by 7, I want to multiply by 7. You could do this in one step. I'm going to do it in two. So I multiply both sides times 7. Now, this right side is negative 6 times 7. I'm multiplying by a negative number. So do I flip my sign? No, because I'm not multiplying both sides by a negative number. I'm multiplying both sides by positive 7. This negative 6 happens to be negative, but I'm not multiplying both sides by a negative. So that doesn't have anything to do with me flipping my sign. If this was a negative 7 on both sides, then I would flip the sign, but it's not, so I don't. So these 7s go away, and I'm left with 2a. Sign stays the same. Negative 6 times 7 is negative 42. Okay, same thing again. I have to get rid of the 2, so I'm going to divide. Same thing over here. Oh, this is a negative. So since it's a negative, do I flip my sign? No, it doesn't matter if it's negative. It matters what I'm doing to both sides. What am I doing to both sides? I'm dividing by positive 2. So my sign does not flip because both sides don't have a negative. So this goes away, and I'm left with a. Sign stays the same, negative 21. Right? So you can have negatives without flipping your sign. But if you're doing something to both sides of the inequality that involves a negative number, then you will flip your sign. All right, let's do a couple more. Let's look at number 11. That's a multiplication problem. N divided by 10. To get rid of divided by 10, I'm going to multiply by 10. And I have to multiply this side by 10. These 10s cancel. N 5.4 times 10 is 54. And then my sign stays the same. Right? And last one, let's do number 10. Negative 3/4 is greater than negative 9p divided by 5. Okay, so here I want to get p by itself. I'm going to get rid of this negative 5 on the bottom first. I know this negative sign isn't on the bottom, but if I'm getting rid of it, I can either lump it with this 5 or I can lump it with the 9. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to get rid of it first. You know what? Actually, I lied. I'm not going to get rid of it first. I'm going to get rid of it second. First, I'm going to get rid of that 5 on the bottom. So I multiply this side by 5, and I'm going to multiply this side by 5. So 5 times 3 is 15 over 4, and there's a negative sign in front. Leave my sign the same, and I'm left with negative 9p on this side, right? Because these 5s canceled. I multiplied both sides by positive 5, so my sign did not change. Okay, and now I want to get rid of this negative 9, so I'm going to divide by negative 9. So I have to divide by negative 9 on this side. And dividing by negative 9 is the same thing as multiplying by 1 over 9. So I'm going to multiply by 1 over negative 9. It's the same thing as multiplying by negative 9. So I am multiplying both sides or dividing both sides by a negative number now. I'm dividing both sides by negative 9. So now my sign is going to flip, right? So here on this side, 1 times negative 15, I'll write it over here, is negative 15. Negative 9 times 4 is negative 36. My sign has to flip because I multiplied both sides by a negative. These negatives canceled, so I got a P here, right? And I'm not quite done because I've got a negative over a negative. That turns to a positive, and P is on the right. So I got to flip-flop these two numbers. So P, here, I'll write it in red so it stands out. P is going to go on the left. Negative 15 over negative 36, which is actually positive 15 over positive 36, goes on the right. And since the mouth is opening towards the P, it's got to open towards the P here. So I changed my sign going from here to here. When I multiplied both sides by negative 1 over 9, or in other words, when I divided both sides by negative 9. That's super confusing. Let me go over that one more time. Sorry. I know, just what everyone wants to do, more work, right? All right, negative 3 over 4, just don't want anyone to leave confused, is greater than negative 9p over 5. Okay, so here's what I did. This is spread out a little better, makes a little more sense. Same problem, we're almost done. Okay, so here, I want to get p by itself. I want to start by getting rid of this divided by 5. I left the minus sign with the top. You could have put the minus sign with the bottom and changed your sign as soon as you multiplied both sides by negative 5. That's fine. Excuse me. Or you can put it with the negative 9. It does not matter. So I'm going to multiply this side by 5, multiply this side by 5. Since I'm multiplying both sides by a positive number in this step, my sign doesn't flip yet, right? So these 5s cancel. This is really 5 over 1. So 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. 1 times 4 is 4. My sign stays the same because I didn't multiply by negatives. And over here, I'm left with 9p. The 5s canceled. Okay, so now I want p by itself. I want to get rid of that negative 9. So I'm going to divide by negative 9, right? And so on this side, if I divide by negative 9 over 1, remember when you divide by a fraction, it's really multiplying by the reciprocal. So this is like saying negative 15 over 4 times, so it's divided by negative 9 over 1, times the reciprocal. So times 1 over negative 9. Dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal, don't forget. And then I haven't done anything yet, so I'm going to leave my sign the same because I haven't yet done it. Negative 9p divided by negative 9. Okay, so in this next step, when I actually multiply or divide, then I will flip my sign. Okay, so when I do this step, negative 15 times 1 is negative 15. 4 times negative 9 is negative 36. Over here, the 9s cancel, so I'm left with p. And when I bring my sign down, since I just did something with a negative number to both sides, I'm going to flip my sign. Okay, now it's kind of silly here because now I got to flip it again, right? Because the p is on the wrong side. So I'm going to, now we're done with the math. This is the correct answer. We are done with the math. Now we just want to write it in the correct form, right? So I'm going to switch sides and I'm going to put p here. And 15 over 36 will go on this side. Since they were both top and bottom negative, the whole thing becomes positive because a negative divided by a negative is positive. And since the mouth is open towards the p here, when I flip the p in the fraction, the mouth stays open towards the p. So this is the answer that you should have. I hope I didn't confuse everybody too much. That's what I did here in red. Same thing. Okay, last little bit here, I want to translate. We'll do these three together and then I'm all done. Half of a number is at least 14. Half of a number. Remember when we write the word of, we went over this like the first couple weeks of school, translating verbal to algebraic or algebraic to verbal. Half of, when you have a fraction in the word of, it means you're multiplying. So half of a number is x, so 1/2 x, is at least. What does that mean? Is that less than or greater than? if something is at least 14, it means it can be 14 or it can be bigger than 14, right? If it's at the very least 14, that means 14 is the smallest it could be. It could be 14 or it could be bigger than 14. So it's going to be greater than or equal to 14. You got to kind of think through that logically, right? Is at least means greater than or equal to 14. And then it also says, because I've noticed some of you guys that have handed your work in early this week did not follow directions, it says define a variable, write the inequality, and solve. So you got to solve it too. So if I solve this, and I'll multiply this side by 1/2, oh no, what am I doing? Multiply this side by 2/1, multiply by the reciprocal, multiply this side by 2/1, these cancel, and I'm left with x equals 14 times 2 is 28. So you had to write the inequality, and you had to solve it, and you have to show me all your work. I know, lovely. All right, the opposite of 1/3 a number, is greater than 9. The opposite means if it's positive, make it negative, or if it's negative, make it positive. The opposite of 1/3 a number. So 1/3 a number is 1/3 x. It's just like saying 1/3 of a number. And it's the opposite of that, so I'm going to put negative, is greater than, oops, sorry, did it the wrong way. Woo, goof. Nyman, pay attention. Is greater than 9. The mouth should be open towards the negative 1/3. Okay, so to solve this, this is your inequality written very poorly by your teacher. Negative 1/3 x is greater than 9. Now we got to solve for x. So we're going to multiply this side by negative 3, because the reciprocal of negative 1/3 is negative 3/1. Multiply this side by negative 3/1. These cancel. I'm left with x here. 9 times negative 3 is negative 27 here. And since I multiplied both sides by a negative, my sign flips. So this is my answer for number 14. I hope that makes sense. Okay, and then lastly, 1/5 of a number. So 1/5 x is at most 30. Okay, again, what does that mean? Well, if at least means greater than or equal to, I would guess at most means less than or equal to, right? The most this could be equal to is 30. So it could be equal to 30, or it could be smaller than 30, but it can't be bigger than 30, because the most it can be is 30. So it can be less than or equal to 30, right? So now we want to solve it. This is our inequality. Now we solve. To get rid of 1/5, I multiply by the reciprocal, which is 5/1. Multiply this side by 5/1. I'm multiplying both sides by a positive, so my sign will not change. These cancel. X, sign stays the same. 30 times 5 is 150. All right, if you guys have questions, let me know.